Here we go. So let me tell my folks that I'm live. And we will jump right into today's topic, which I didn't think I was going to have to cover, but I see I was mistaken. I didn't think I was going to have to cover this at all, but that was a clear mistake. So we're going to have to talk about it. So again, I'm just alerting my followers to let them know I'm live. Oh, there's that echo that I love so much. So we'll get rid of that. Okay. Again, I'm just letting people know that I'm here. Okay. Posting that again, just to let people know that I'm here. I'm hoping that all of my peeps are subscribed and that you have the bell rung so that you know when I go live when I drop new content. So, hoping that is the case. So, yeah. All right. So, it should be good. Should be good. So, we're going to jump in to today's topic. It's 10 o'clock, and you know I starts on time. So, I'm on 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every Friday with my live broadcast. So, what we're going to do today, we're going to start out by listening to the voice of Tony Gilroy. And Tony Gilroy is the creator and the writer of Andor. Okay, so we're going to start out by listening to his voice. So pull that up. And here we go. Okay. So you heard in his own words about what happened when he came in on Rogue One That's also the creator of Andor, the TV show, because Rogue One, as you know, one of the leads was Cassian Andor. Every time I see the word Andor in print, I still think it's a planet or a system and not a person. But anyway, so Andor dropped 3 episodes this week to start off their season 2. And I have to say that they're just so boring and I'm just so disinterested. First of all, Cassian Andor, the one who's the lead character, the one who the show is named after, is the least interesting character in the large ensemble cast. Out of all the characters in there, he's the least interesting. Okay? So writers know, or if you've been trained as a writer, you know that you have to build your story around your most interesting character, the character that's going to get most of the eyes on it, the character that people are going to want to follow their arc and their journey. That's not what happens, at least for me, with Cassian. And it never has in this show. All throughout the first season, I found other characters more interesting. These 3 episodes, I still find other characters more interesting. Cassian is the least interesting character in this whole mix. And on top of that, he does the bumbling hero thing. Now, I know some people like the bumbling hero thing, very much so. And, you know, when he's struggling and he can't get himself together, and it's kind of like a greatest American hero thing, that's going way back, if you remember that show. Or the kind of thing where, you know, in other words, he's like the opposite of Han Solo. Not cool, not calm, not collected. And I know Han, you know, did a whole lot of stuff off the cuff and thought on his feet. But that's the point. He could think on his feet. He could adjust to a situation. He would still come out on top. He'd fight his way out or lie his way out or whatever he had to do. Cassian, especially in these first 3 episodes where he's struggling with the TIE fighter, trying to watch him break that TIE fighter out of the hangar it was stored in was one of the most ridiculous things I've seen in a while. So like I said, some people like that bumbling hero thing. Some people like that whole vibe. I personally do not. So there's that. Now, the storyline with who I call Commander Simp and his lady in white, can't stand him either. Okay? Deidre Miro is the character, the lady in white. But her husband, boyfriend, living companion, whatever the scrag he is, Mr. Super Simp, can't stand him either. Can't stand him either. Lord have mercy. He's so sniveling. He's so whiny. He's so unsure of himself. He looks like he's about to, you know, soil himself every time he has to have a thought or make a decision. And no. So nothing about that interests me. So the only 2 characters that I find interesting on this show are Luthen Rael, played by Stellan Skarsgård, and Mon Mothma, played by, what's the actress's name that plays Mon Mothma? Genevieve O'Reilly, or she might pronounce it Genevieve, because I knew somebody like that once. So Genevieve O'Reilly plays Mon Mothma, and Stellan Skarsgård plays Luthen Rael. Those 2 characters I find interesting, and I'll tell you why. Both of those characters are burdened down with the weight of what starting the rebellion or living in 2 worlds feels like. Trading information, putting their lives on the line, trying to do everything they can to undermine the empire and its formation. And they know it's going to cost them. They know it's going to cost them their life one way or other. See, it either costs you your life in a moment of time where you die, or it costs you your life where you die slowly, where you've given yourself to the cause, and now all your life revolves around that cause, and you don't have any more life left. You're not living for anything else except the cause. So both of them, Luthen and Mon Mothma, understand that, and it's on them all the time. And so the performances of the actors convey that very, very well. The performances of the actors convey very well how they understand that what they're doing is going to cost them their lives. What they're doing is, again, giving up the lives that they had and giving up the lives that they would have lived to undermine the empire, to do everything they can to shut it down, to turn the course of history's events in a different way because of the formation of Palpatine's empire. And I love that. Also, what I find extremely exciting about Mon Mothma is that she's royalty. She lives in that 1% of royalty world. And I'm always fascinated by that particular world because people like that always try to sell you the idea that they're the people to aspire to. You know, those are the plastics in any story, that they're the plastics. They're the cool kids. They're the upper echelon. They're the upper crust. They're the ones whose lives you should want. You should want to be like them is their whole mantra. I stopped by then to pose this question. Then why are they always so miserable? If royalty and one percenterism and that kind of posh life, and there's a lot of rituals involved when she married off her daughter, which was completely a political and economic arrangement. Mon Mothma hates her life, and she hates the idea of her daughter being traded for a favor, traded to form an alliance, traded to make peace between the houses and for political gain. She hates that idea, and she hates it for herself. So she tries to convey that frustration and disappointment to her daughter, and her daughter's like, I'm doing this. Her daughter completely rejects her mother's opinion. I wish you were drunk now, because her daughter is like, I'm going through with this. I'm down with this happening. For whatever reason, I'm going through with this. I'm going to become the wife of the young prince. And Mon Mothma starts crying. And I find that whole thing fascinating. Because in general, and this is going to feed into what I'm going to talk about in a minute, in general, what we have to understand is how life itself works, because it doesn't work differently from person to person. So I want you to think about it like gravity. Gravity doesn't work different from person to person. Velocity, mass increases with speed, combustion, friction, they don't work differently from person to person. I want you to think about it like that. So what Mon Mothma and everybody in her situation doesn't seem to want to understand is that if you want to wear the crown, if you want to be a part of the royalty, if you want to be in that, if you're born into it or you marry into it, or somehow you get in that world, it's not price free. You actually have to pay a price, just like you do with anything else. There's no socioeconomic level, there's no education level, there's no level in life you could be on where there aren't pros and cons and where you don't have to pay a price to be there. That does not exist. It does not. And so it's fascinating to me to watch Mon Mothma navigate that world, always angry, always frustrated, always upset, as if there's no price. All the connections that she has, all the perks that she has, all the privilege that she has, all the perspective that she has comes at a price. And so it just amazes me when I see people, characters like that, but that same kind of stuff in real life where they seem to continually try to convey that they're the ones you want to aspire to. They're living the lives that peons and peasants and farm folk and normal folks and that kind of thing should want to live, but they miserable. See, I'm trying to understand how they rationalize and justify that in their mind. That's why Mon Mothma as a character fascinates me, because she is clearly heavily discontent with the life she's living. She's clearly heavily rebellious against its traditions and customs and requirements. And she clearly wanted to spare her daughter that path. And her daughter looked at her like, okay, mama, that's your beef. I got this. So I find that fascinating. So that leads me into our topic for today, which is, let me put it on the screen, which is the essay in Andor. I don't know if I can say the words because I know that YouTube is funny about certain language and I don't, want to get my video, whatever. So the essay in Andor, okay, is what we're talking about today. So I'm going to talk about it from an external real world view out here, us as the audience watching it. And I'm going to talk about it from an internal view in the story world from the character's point of view. So I'm going to talk about both. Okay. So first that's why I played that clip from Tony Gilroy for you at the top. So you could hear what he really thinks about Star Wars. He said he doesn't like it. He said he's not interested in it. He says it doesn't fascinate him, doesn't catch his attention. And he doesn't think that Rogue One was actually a Star Wars movie. Okay, good to know. So out here in the real world with us as fans watching something like, and I watched it and it was definitely an assault and definitely brutal. Could have been more brutal, but I mean, it was clear. It wasn't subtle. It was clear what he was trying to do and clear that Bix fought as hard as she could, okay, to beat him back. She did beat him back, and then he stumbles outside while he's bleeding out and then cracks his head on something in the yard and breaks his neck and dies, okay? So it was clear what that was. There's no ambiguity into what's going on there. So out here in the real world, if you want to use a scene like that, a storyline like that, if you want to use something like that in your story, then you have to understand that that's going to be so powerful until that will become the story. Because you don't get to use something as powerful as SA and then think you just get what you want from it. You just get attention on it. You just get whatever. Now, I've been reading the arguments all week where people have been saying that, this isn't their Star Wars. And then the flip side is that we had, certain issues in Star Wars before, like, the Luke and Leia kiss, which turned out to be an incestuous kiss. Lord have mercy. Then, of course, Leia's iconic and famous gold bikini when she's a slave in Jabba's palace. And so people have been talking about how that, and I made a tweet about how the whole thing about the narrative about how it's a movie about space wizards for kids, I don't think has ever been true. I know that it was truly said, but I don't think that's ever been true. But anyway, so the idea that we've never had those kinds of issues in Star Wars at all isn't completely true. Isn't completely true. But this was much more focused. This was the camera focused in on a very specific type of experience situation. I'm just trying to avoid saying the words essay because I don't want to get my video in trouble. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So it was a very specific type of all that. And it was graphic enough. And again, we understood what was going on. Okay, you can't include that, something so powerful and something so, I won't say divisive, but maybe I'll say polarizing, because some people have had actual experience with that very thing with SA themselves. So you can't include something that powerful and not get a reaction. That is not possible. And the way life works is you have the freedom to choose whatever path that you want. But you have to take everything that comes along with the path you chose. Let me say that again. You have the freedom to choose whatever path you want. So as a creative person, you can put whatever content in your creative art that you want. But whatever comes along with those choices, you have to take that too. So you can't put something as powerful, as intense, as polarizing as an essay scene, a brutal essay scene where somebody's literally fighting for their lives, somebody's fighting for their life, and think that's not going to have an impact, or think it's only going to have the impact that you want. No, it won't. No, it won't. You got to take everything that comes along with that. And normally when you put something involving essay in something, that becomes so powerful until it becomes a story. And that has been the case this week about Andor. The essay scene has become the story. It's not the only story. It's not the only storyline going on, but that has become the story. And that's what happens when you use something that powerful in your content, in your presentation. Okay? So that's externally. That's from our point of view out here as fans watching. In the story world, I know that things like that have had to have happened before. That obviously, when you're dealing with something like the Empire taking over all these planetary star systems and Palpatine being in power, and the Empire basically occupies and pushes out, either takes over the economy of every planet, every place, or recruits the people, or turns the people into betrayers like we saw in episode 3, whatever. When you got a totalitarian regime moving in, then of course stuff like that happens. That has happened all, Lord, sorry, that was my dryer going off. That has happened all throughout history. So of course it's not a new concept story world, and I'm sure it wasn't new to Bix herself. So she fought. She fought because she didn't want that to happen. She fought because she wasn't down with that kind of thing. And it's really funny, juxtaposed next to the wedding. So when I say funny, I don't mean haha funny. I mean interesting to see how, in some sense, one young lady is having to deal with why she's marrying this prince, because it wasn't her choice. He wasn't her choice, didn't really even know her, and wasn't necessarily her idea. But now she's going to have to deal with everything that comes along with being married to the prince, and that's going to include, obviously, them living as husband and wife. So that there's that area, and then there's the area of someone being forced, or someone an attempted forced to do something they absolutely do not want to do. So I find that juxtaposition interesting. But my point being is that in the story world, I agree with the backdrop of the Empire that there's no way that hasn't happened countless times, because it's happened throughout history countless times when you have an advancing, invading army or regime, when they take over the resources of wherever they're trying to conquer. That normally includes, the women and the children for whatever nefarious purposes they might have. So in story world can't possibly be a new concept. Out here in the real world, absolutely not a new concept. Okay? But, like I was saying before, Gilroy and the rest of them may need to understand that even though you want to include that, even though you have included that, even though we've got now a close-up look at that type of thing, it's entirely possible that some audience members don't want to see that in their Star Wars. Okay, I'm going to say that one more time. It's entirely possible that some audience members don't want to see that in their Star Wars content. So you can make the argument about the Luke and Leia kiss. You can make the argument about Han seducing Leia and them falling in love. You can make the argument about the Twi'lek dancer in Jabba's palace. You can make the argument about Leia's gold bikini and her being a slave in Jabba's palace. You can make the argument that we've had levels of that before, and that is factually correct. But I will repeat, this was a very specific, zoomed in on graphic instance. And it's entirely possible that people, the audience watching that, may not want to see that in their Star Wars. They possibly do not want to see that type of content in their Star Wars. So once you introduce it, you can't go back. That's the thing about using anything related to SA or, S of any kind. You can't go back once you introduce it. Can't go back. And so now the question then becomes, are we going to see more? Are they going to take it further? Is it something that only is going to be shown happening in the Bix? Is it going to be shown in other? It's a can of worms. It's a Pandora's box of issues that are now opened up. And so can't go back. So my take on it is what I told you before at the top. And that is that whatever you do as a content creator, you're free to create whatever kind of content you want. But you have to take everything that comes along with your choices. That's the way life itself works. It's not particular to any person or group. You're free to create any kind of content you want, but everything that comes along with what you created, you got to deal with that too. So if there's pushback, that's what comes along with including that kind of content. If there's people that cheer it and say, yeah, you're just, prudish, or you're naive, or, I've read all that this week, or that kind of thing, people are going to say that. If some people say, can't watch this show with my kids, wanted to watch this show with my kids, can't do so now, people are going to say that. You're going to get the full gamut of reactions. You're going to get the full spectrum of reactions when you include something that powerful, that divisive, that polarizing, that game changing. Okay. So I was trying to decide if I was going to review Andor or not, but these first 3 episodes didn't grab me at all. They just didn't. They just did not grab me at all. They did not. Okay. Andor, Kazin's not interesting. None of the other characters are interesting. The side quests. Remember how in The Last Jedi, when Rose Tico and Finn are going on the side quest to Canto Bite, and that whole sequence could have been avoided, that whole sequence could have been skipped? That's what 90% of Andor feels like to me. Feels like a bunch of sequences that could have been skipped, a bunch of sequences that we didn't really need. So I might just read reviews. I might just watch review videos. I do want to see what happens with Mon Mothma, because she keeps getting pushed further and further into having to become the leader of the rebellion, because she's so unhappy with the way things are going. And I do want to see what happens, with her daughter's marriage, how that pans out. Because again, so many people always trying to propagate the idea that that's the life that everybody should aspire to, and that life makes them better than people that don't have it. And I'm like, then why are you miserable? So anyway, that's it. That's it for today. Quick one for today. Just wanted to chime in on that topic because it's been the talk of everything that's been going on this week. Now, I do have some Fantastic Four rant room videos coming out. So I had Mr. Richardson from the Fandalorian podcast on the show. And then we did some rants on this new Fantastic Four. And we have different points of views on a lot of different things. So it's quite interesting. It was a great talk. So I'm going to be posting those videos today. So be sure to like this video, share the video, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell to be sure that you get notified when I'm live or when I drop fresh content. Okay? So that's it. I will see you next week. Remember, I'm on at the same time every week, Friday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. I'll see you for next week's live weekly comics chat. DT2 Comics Chat out.